Everybody, it's Dakota, and today we're going to be going over a sweet Pioneer deck that won Players Tour Brussels not that long ago in the hands of Joel Larson. And this is like his homebrew deck that he took to the tournament, and people just kind of ran away with it. This isn't his deck list that he played. This is from the Pioneer IQ in Louisville, which obviously took first place, as you can see right there. So they call it Sultai Delirium, Swedish Delirium, whatever you want to call it. It's basically this Sultai value deck that just gets to play a lot of really cool and really powerful cards. So I'm not gonna wait too much longer. We'll just kind of get into it. So basically, the payoffs for being a Sultai deck, you get to play Traverse the Ovenwald, which lets you search for a basic land, reveal it, put it in your hand. But if you have Delirium, you get to search for a creature or a land card and put it to your hand instead. So, what is this really getting? You got some one-ofs like Walking Ballista. You have a Scavenging Ooze for like the graveyard decks. You can go get Murderous Riders. Tireless Tracker is really good. You can get an Uro, play it, and then get it in the graveyard so you can bring it back later. Ishkana, which really gums up the ground and the air too because of the spiders she makes, and eventually just put your opponent on a clock as well by just draining them for 3-4 life each turn. And then probably like the biggest payoff and probably the best one, honestly, Emrakul the Promised End. When you cast it, you can gain control of an opponent's target opponent during that player's next turn, and then after that turn, they take an extra turn, and this is a flying trample protection from instants. Creature 13/13. If you played when this card was in standard, you would think like, oh, well, your opponent gets an extra turn after you take their turn. Like, that's probably pretty good for them, and it's not. They could probably take 5 extra turns after you take their turn, and if their hand was like that good, all of a sudden like you just turn to trash, you leave their board decimated or leave them with just about nothing, and that extra turn that they take afterward is them trying to really do some damage control, but then they really can't get rid of Emrakul, so then they're just kind of in this weird spot where they're facing down to 13/13. They're probably dead on your next turn anyway. If not, they're probably going to wish they were dead. And that just speaks to the power of this card. To enable this Sultai or this Delirium engine, there's Jace Vryn's Prodigy, lets you draw and discard a card, and then when you have 5 more cards in your graveyard, he can flip into a Planeswalker, which we all know the Planeswalker side of it is really powerful, akin to like Snapcaster Mage with a -3. The emblem at -9 can give you a win condition all on its own, just a really powerful Planeswalker. Satyr Wayfinder lets you hit land drops, puts the rest of the cards into the graveyard, which is probably just as important as hitting lands. Basically makes it so you hit your third land drop. Uh, Probably gets you pretty close to fueling Delirium and things like that. Courser lets you hit lands and things like that. Another really powerful card, standard, and blocks really well and gains you life, which can come up. Um, Liliana the Last Hope can also kind of fuel the Delirium plan by milling 2 cards and then getting a creature back if you so choose to. That can either get back like a Satyr Wayfinder, mill some more cards, or it can get back one of your one-ofs. Maybe Ishkana dies or an Emrakul dies. You can just pick it back up with Liliana and just cast it again. Pretty sweet. Um, Also, one Grizzly Salvage definitely fuels the graveyard plan as well. Doing something similar to what Satyr Wayfinder does, except this lets you hit a creature and it digs a card deeper. And it also has the added benefit of being an instant, but Satyr Wayfinder is a little bit easier to cast. So that's something to keep in mind as well, and why there's only really one copy of this in the deck. Mystery Shakes the World's a win condition. Thoughtseize stops like the can really knock off the Lotus Breach decks and the Inverter decks, which is where this deck really shines is in those 2 matchups because obviously when they have an inverter but they don't have a win condition in their hand or in their graveyard, or you're able to take it uh, their win condition with Thoughtseize and then have Scavenging Ooze eat it and things like that, you make it really hard for them to basically win the game and make them have to grind against you and with you when your cards are just overall more powerful. Fatal Push is some early interaction. Sometimes you just really need to beat down your opponent, so Fatal Push is just an efficient removal spell. Also, just really good at killing a lot of the threats in mono black, which is also I think another deck that can be really good against the breach and inverter decks. Whenever Traverse, just probably one of your best cards when you have Delirium for sure. Abrupt Decay for some uncounterable killing. If you need to get rid of like a 3 mana Teferi or a Narset or really any kind of like problem permanent, especially against control, it has the added benefit of not being able to be countered. Um, Other than that, just a very efficient removal spell on its own in a format where things are pretty cheaply costed. The lands, you're only playing 23 lands, mainly because Seder Wayfinder, Grizzly Salvage can help you find some. So can Courser of Crewfix and Jace once you get them going. You play 4 Blooming Marsh, 1 Botanical Sanctum, 4 Breeding Pool, 3 Fabled Passage, which finds your one of Swamp and things like that. 4 Overgrown Tomb, and 2 Water Grave, because as you can probably notice, you're mainly just a green black deck splashing blue for the really powerful Uro and some Jace, and a decent amount of sideboard cards too as well. So in the sideboard, there's a Duress, an Assassin's Trophy, Cast Down, Disdainful Stroke, Mystical Dispute, 1 Reclamation Sage, 1 Tireless Tracker, a Hostage Taker, a Kalitas, some Leyland of the Voids, and Unmoored Ego. A lot of these are just to fight the other like combo decks that are in the format. Swedish Sultai, Sultai, Delirium, things like that. This deck is just a super value deck that can outvalue any of the decks that want to try to be aggressive or try to grind with it, and can grind probably better than just about any other deck in the format, while also on top of it being able to disrupt the other combo decks like Lotus Storm and Demir Inverter to just basically stop them long enough so that you can get enough threats into play and win the game. Because obviously, trying to value your combo opponent when they obviously have inevitability isn't good. So that's why like cards like Nisu Shakes the World, an Escaped Uro, or even an Emrakul. An Emrakul can definitely ruin your opponent's day, especially if they're on the Demir Inverter, because you could just invert with no cards in their graveyard and then just kill them on their next turn, which makes Emrakul very promising. Get it? It's a joke because he's the promised end. Never mind. And that's really it for my take on Sultai Delirium and basically how it lines up in the format. Basically, if you're not going to be playing Demir Inverter or you're not going to be playing Lotus Breach, then you should definitely be playing some deck that is playing Thoughtseize in it, preferably, just because it's probably one of the best turn 1 disruption spells in the format. Hits everything. 2 life really doesn't matter against either of those decks. So, I mean, if you're playing Mono Black Aggro, you're playing the Sultai Delirium, or you're playing, like, even Obzon or something like that, like, this card is probably your best card. And registering a deck that is not playing Thoughtseize, better be playing either 4 Lotus Field in it, or 4 Inverter of Truth, and some number of Thassa's Oracle and Jace Wielder of Mysteries. So, that's Sultai Delirium for Pioneer. I hope you guys enjoyed this deck tech. I try to go a little bit, try to keep it in depth, but not nearly as long as like the other videos, just because I don't know how good those longer videos are and things like that. Hopefully, I explained enough of like why some of these cards are pretty good in certain matchups and things like that. But yeah, I appreciate you guys checking out the video. Stay tuned for more Pioneer deck techs because this format is awesome. Also going to be getting more into standard. Modern, always the thing that I try to touch on because that's probably my favorite format. Probably just to play. I just really like playing that the high-powered format that actually gets supported by by tournament organizers and things like that. Be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Uh, Obviously, I have deck text and all those three major formats. Some other Magic stuff going on, drama, not drama related. Have some sweet video going up about the challenger decks that are coming up. So be sure to check that out as well. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.